Hey guys, thank y'all so much for coming and giving us a little bit of time today for our church to be able to hear from you. Man, I know you guys know this. We've talked offline, but we've asked these three women in particular to come here today because we have a tough topic we're talking about. We're talking about adorning ourselves with godliness and what it looks like to live in modesty, and that can have a lot of different kind of overtones to it and the way people think about it. But man, I can't think of three better women to talk about this with than you guys. Cross section of our church, different levels of engagement and involvement. So what I want to do first is just ask y'all to introduce yourself a little bit and just tell us a little about who you are. Then we'll get into some of the content.
Well, I'm Debbie Helland, and my husband Randy and I have come to the Mercy Hill for over 8 years, and we have 2 children, grown, married, and 6 grandchildren, and that keeps us busy. I've, at previous church, worked as like a secretary at the church, but I was able to stay home most of the time when my kids were young and watch over them.
It's been awesome having you guys 8 years. That's really great. Rachel, what about you? Give us a little bit of your who you are.
Yeah, my name's Rachel Zuhars. I graduated college in 2020. I've been at Mercy Hill since 2017, and was able to go through the college residency here and do seminary, and then just recently came on staff with the students team here.
That's awesome. We're so pumped to have you. I got a daughter in the ministry. I'm like over the moon about that. Joy, you've been around maybe longer than even Debbie, so how give us a little bit of your story.
Sure. My name is Joy Rivers. My husband is an elder here, so I'm an elder's wife, and we've been at Mercy Hill for 10 years, and I have 3 young children in my home right now. I say right now because we are a foster family, so the number of kids fluctuates. I am a scientist, and I work for a biotech company, so I am not staying home with my kids, but they're in school and living their best lives, so it's great.
Well, hey, again, thank you guys so much. It's good to have y'all. So the passage that we're in this weekend is 1 Timothy chapter 2, that has a lot of dicey stuff at about the middle way, kind of getting towards the end of the chapter. And you guys have had a good chance to look at some of that. We've done sermon planning. We've talked about it. But the passage brings up this concept of, modesty, and particularly how people can, and he specifically mentions women, that it can be a pressure there, maybe even a disproportionate pressure, to adorn from the outside rather than thinking about from the inside. So instead of godliness and adoration to God, it's adorning ourselves with things, of the world that kind of promote beauty and end up putting us in a position of maybe posture against others or gain attention. I would love to get any just like first reaction. When you guys read it and just some of the first thoughts that come into your mind. And I have some specific questions I want to ask you too, but I'd love to get just initial impressions from whoever would be willing to jump in.
I definitely went hard after adorning myself and really didn't think much about adorning myself with godliness and good works, but was always trying to adorn myself in a way that would bring attention to me, in a way that would get me attention from men, from, that might get me out of a traffic ticket, or, whatever it is, that the benefit that I wanted. So as I've gotten older and matured in my relationship with Christ, really turning to more modesty. Obviously, as a married woman, I want to look nice for my husband, for instance, but that's a very different mindset and heart posture than just kind of letting it all hang out there. So, I think just adorning myself with godliness and good works, it looks a lot different from what my life looked like 20 years ago.
Yeah, totally understand. And either one of you guys, just for initial impressions when reading, modesty, adorning with godliness, respectable apparel, look nice, that's fine, but there's another line there that we can cross. Any thoughts from you guys?
I think one of the things when I first read that, preparing for this, and I thought, I know that there's a lot of people who have taken that to the extreme, that verse to the extreme about not wearing jewelry at all or not wearing any makeup at all or anything. And I just think so often Scripture gets twisted or not understood what is meant by it. So I'm glad we're talking about it today.
Yeah, I am too, because I think respectable apparel. We're going to bring it up in the sermon, but the idea of, man, do I have 3 servants putting me together for 5 hours so that I can go to the assembly to church, Sunday? That's a little different than I braid my little girl's hair and she has earrings in. It's a totally different idea. And that's maybe what they were dealing with a little more there, but the heart of it can still be, as Joyce said, I want the attention. Rachel, you specifically work with our young people, just have moved into that role, working with our. But how do you think about this in terms of unique pressures that are on even the girls of our church under 18?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think, and just speaking as somebody who is not married, thinking through, having the desire for relationship, the desire for marriage, those things that are not bad desires and not bad things. But I think from a societal pressure, I think some of that is, just the nature of the broken world. And I think some of that is society of feeling like there is this timeline, right? Or this clock and this expectation that if I don't have the things that I desire immediately when I desire them, that something's wrong with me, And so then thinking through kind of feeling this pressure of, well, then what can I do to get the things that I desire? And so I think there is this pressure that comes in, especially as someone who is a young woman of, okay, I know that I desire a relationship. I know that I desire marriage. I know that the Bible says that this is not a bad desire. And so I'm tempted to jump into, okay, well, then what do I have to do to get there? What do I have to do? And I think a lot of times the first instinct is, well, what do I have control over? I have control over the way that I appear physically. So how can I leverage that almost to get what I want and what I think the Lord has for me, but maybe I just don't want to wait for it,
Yeah, I think, man, that's insightful, and I feel like even in the passage, I think Paul brings up very similar ideas. Men maybe go out about it sometimes in a different way, not all the time. One of the things we're talking about in this passage is that these are not unique to a woman or unique to a man. Maybe there's some generalities there, but you can certainly see on both sides people that may want to circumvent the plan of God and jump and get there. Another thing we've talked about some, I don't know if any of you guys would jump in on this, but how has some of this changed? And maybe I'll speak to Joy and Debbie particularly, because Rachel, I don't know, you may be young enough where your whole life has been, at least high school, middle school, high school life has been in a social media age. Maybe, I'm not sure, kind of, but we certainly remember a time before the gram. Okay, so I mean, what do you think some of that? And I saw The Social Dilemma. Some of you guys probably saw these things, but like, what do you think the image-based TikTok, Instagram, that kind of thing? What kind of pressures does that put on you, or what kind of pressures might it put on this next generation coming behind, y'all? Either one of you guys, if you want to jump in.
I think it is a lot of pressure on, especially young people, but even of all ages, because you wanna portray being happy and being successful and having a beautiful house or having a beautiful, you can bake or whatever it is, and it's just all these pressures that before nobody saw inside your house if you were on the phone or something. Now with social media, everybody sees way too much.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So I definitely remember the pre-social media days, and I actually have been off of social media for almost 8 years now. And the reason that I got off is because I was pregnant, and there's this whole social media culture around celebrating your pregnancy and the pictures and the updates and the this and the that, and I just felt myself wanting to compete with other people who were pregnant at the same time as me, and I could see into the future using my child, who wasn't even born yet, to, you know, enter into this competition to like win motherhood. And I was like, you know what, I don't think I could stop myself from doing that if I stayed on, and so I got off, and I haven't missed it at all. So nobody is seeing the inside of my house, thank you, Jesus. But you know, I am a little anxious for my kids as they come up, because I know that the pressure is going to be so much for them. And you know, I have 2 boys and a girl, and even for the boys, you know, this adorning and in godliness and good works is not just a message to women. It's also a message to men and boys about what they should be looking for and valuing in women. And so just trying to teach them that, and teaching them how to kind of filter what they're seeing on social media as they grow up, I think is going to be really important.
Man, that's a great insight. I mean, because I think really that ends up going both ways. I mean, because you know, we haven't gone into this here, but thinking about this passage, men are really to guard against being argumentative, fuming, because that can pull them away from the mission of God. And then women are really guarded against maybe even, I think the word you use is exactly right, kind of competing with each other over, you know, using the outer adornment. But then it's a reverse to say, well, the women should be looking for the guys that don't lift their hands in an argument, but lift their hands in worship. And, you know, men should be looking for women that are adorned on the outside. So that's really good. Rachel, I would love to hear from you, either from your own life stage or just from your work with our, you know, the students of this church, particularly around what Joyce said with that idea, because I do think that nails this passage. It's about a competition. It's about like, man, I do these things on the outside in order to identify with a certain group, or to you know, posture and assert kind of where I am in the pecking order, or you know, even wealth. People can't adorn themselves with costly apparel if they didn't have money back then, and they would go into a church and they would sit. It's like, man, you don't sit with us because you don't have what we have. How do you see that playing out, either in your generation or maybe even both, the competition aspect of the adornment, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think even just speaking from personal experience, thinking through, like, I was one of those people in that situation who I didn't have the resources financially, you know, growing up to put myself in a position where I could adorn myself with those types of things. And I feel like because of that, I can kind of step back. Like, I see it now in working with, you know, middle schoolers, high schoolers, college students. But even just from my perspective, seeing it's almost like this power dynamic, you know, that you're striving for. And I think you're right in that it is a competition, in a sense of, I want to belong. I want to communicate something about myself to this group of people, and really I want them to see the best of me. You know, I want them to see the very best that I can offer, and channeling that into physically, like, what can I do to make myself stand out in a way that's desirable to people, because I want people to desire me. You know, I think that it manifests physically, but I think that it's definitely a deeper desire there of, I just want people to notice me, and I want people to desire to know me, you know, and to know me the way that I want to be known, to know the best parts of me. I don't want people to see the parts of me that I'm ashamed of. I want to present to people this image of me that I want them to have of me, and that includes, you know, my very best.
Yeah, and you mentioned in the sermon planning about enjoyment versus fulfillment. Yeah. You know, wanting to, you know, to be desired, and then it's like, man, that really gets into the gospel about, man, God does desire us, He loves us, He wants us. But if that's not enough, then we're going to be, you know, looking around. Hey, couple more things. This is really good. Debbie, I don't want to put you on the spot, okay? I'm about to, though. All right. I would love, because I think in this crowd, in our little group of 4 right here, brothers and sisters, you're the only one, you and Randy are the only ones who've raised an adult daughter. And, I mean, what are some, you know, is there anything just kind of life wisdom-wise, you know, that you would tell parents now raising girls to be thinking about, or to really try to instill in them?
I think it really concerns me when I see little girls wearing clothes that are more for teenage girls, and they market it that way so much. And it's like, let the little kids be little kids. And I think that's dangerous, really, because it's promoting that image. And so, I mean, we would get hand-me-down clothes sometimes from friends or older cousins or whatever, and there were certain things that I would just pass along or pass off on of those things. So I was selective in what I would let Katie wear. Just being aware, and I think also being really aware of what they're doing if they have a phone, being real involved, not just letting them go in their room and be on whatever app that they want to be on, but really being involved in monitoring what they're doing, because they're exploring and they're curious, and that can be dangerous.
Yeah, that's so good. I mean, how much of our society is pushing, it's always one more rung down. And we saw this on a Netflix uproar, a year ago or so, or whenever it was during COVID, with some of the programming that they had that's trying to push adolescents into being a higher teenage bracket. It's lighting the fuse way earlier and earlier and earlier and earlier for something that ultimately you may end up fighting, man or woman, your whole life. Competition, acceptance, these type of things. Joy, you said one thing earlier too I'd love for you to bring up about, God shaping our physical body, but then us kind of concentrating on that rather than like our giftings, like that God's given us gifts. And I don't know if you'd maybe just share with that, talk about that for a minute.
Yeah, so when I read through this passage at first, it brought to mind that song, Shake What Your Mama Gave You. And just
What year is that song, by the way?
I don't know, and I don't know who sang it either. That's not my area of gifting. but there is a way that you can orient your life and the things that you do to showcase the gifts that God has given you physically in order to benefit yourself in this competition that we're having with all the other women. And I just think it's so important that you're using the gifts that God gave you and the experiences that God gives you for the kingdom and for good works. And the experience that came to my mind was, when I was in my 20s, I watched someone that was very close to me die from an illness. And what that led me to do was to volunteer for hospice and to be with other people who had, who were supporting family members who were in the process of dying. And so, that's a way that I could pour into people based on the experiences that God gave me and get good from that experience, as opposed to, just relying on the physical blessings that He had given me.
That's good. Well, hey, guys, I'm going to ask y'all one more question. I'm going to give you a second to think about it because I'm going to read this passage one more time. And then any closing thoughts, and we'll be done. But the question that I have is just, in light of everything we've talked about, is there anything real practical, just practically, that we can think about when we're trying to make that shift between, immodesty towards a respectable apparel, and trying to use what we wear to position ourselves because of what we have and what it means and the status symbol of it all versus just godly adornment from the inside out. So anything practical. I mean, as practical as a website, or as practical as blogs, or as practical as, David, you've already shared some of this with be careful about phones or don't start it too early, or that's really practical. But anything you guys want to share, I'd appreciate. All right, I'm going to read this one more time. It's 1 Timothy 2:9. Likewise, also that women should adorn themselves in respectable apparel, with modesty and self-control, not with braided hair and gold and pearls and costly attire, but with what is proper for a woman who profess godliness with good works. Any ways that the women of our church, particularly the men, are going to learn so much from this too. I'm learning from you guys, but just in line with the passage, like anything real practical that the women of our church can do in this area to make, to try to honor this? Go ahead.
I always think a lot of times if I compliment another woman, I'll say, you're as beautiful on the inside as you are on the outside, practical. Even more beautiful on the inside. And I think that's maybe what we need to strive for is beauty inside and our reverence towards God and our relationship with God. And if you are really beautiful inside, it's going to shine on your face.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's good.
One thing that comes to my mind is, are the clothes that you're wearing comfortable? I know when I was in a period where I was kind of dressing for other people, you're wearing things that aren't appropriate to the weather. Why? Because they show more skin. Or you're wearing shoes that make your feet hurt. Why? Because they make your legs look good, or whatever. Like your motivation is off, and you're wearing things that you're pulling on all the time. Like, that's just really practical. Like, it's not going to get longer. So if you feel like you have to pull on it to be comfortable, you probably shouldn't have put it on in the first place. So I think those are just like really practical things that you can think of.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Rachel, anything you want to
Yeah, I mean, I think you mentioned earlier just kind of what I was talking about with the difference between, like, am I enjoying this or am I looking for fulfillment out of it? And I think something that I have done personally at a couple different points of my life is, like, if I feel like there's something physically, like, whether it's like wearing makeup every day or, time on social media, if I feel like it's something of, hey, I might be leaning into this a little bit too much. Like, this might not be that I'm just enjoying it. I might be kind of relying on it. Man, I would say just challenge yourself to go a week without it and see what that does to your heart. Because if you spend a week off of a social media app, or if you don't put on mascara for a week and you find yourself like at multiple times having like the feeling of anxiety, of this anxiousness, then I think that will reveal something about where your heart is at, and that's something to dig into. And anybody can give anything up for 7 days. Like, you can do it.
Yeah, that's so good. Well, hey, we'll end it there. You guys are awesome. Thank y'all so much for your time and willing to step into what's not the easiest conversation, and to just step right in on behalf of the women of our church. And man, I'm just so appreciative. So thank you guys so much.